The metallic corridors of the International Space Station Hermes echoed with urgent footsteps as Captain Dominic Fletcher rushed toward the observation deck. His heart pounded against his ribs, not from exertion but from anticipation. After 20 years of searching, humanity had finally made contact with an advanced alien civilization. The observation deck's massive windows revealed Earth below, a stunning blue marble suspended in the void. But today, all eyes were fixed on something else, a sleek, silver vessel that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. The Nexian diplomatic ship. Captain Fletcher, a voice called out. Dr. Lyra Stone, the station's chief xenobiologist, gestured him over. They're ready for transmission. Dominic nodded, straightening his uniform. The holographic display flickered to life, and he found himself face to face with their first alien diplomat. She called herself Cynthia, and her appearance was both familiar and alien, humanoid, but with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Her eyes were completely black, reflecting the stars themselves. Greetings, Captain Fletcher, Cynthia's voice resonated with an otherworldly harmony. We appreciate your willingness to host these discussions. The honor is ours, Dominic replied, maintaining his diplomatic composure despite his racing thoughts. We look forward to establishing peaceful relations between our peoples. The initial meetings progressed smoothly, too smoothly, Dominic thought. The Nexians offered advanced medical technology, clean energy solutions, and faster-than-light travel. In return, they asked only for cultural exchange and the opportunity to study human biology. But something felt off. Dominic noticed the subtle ways Cynthia's eyes followed their movements, how she seemed particularly interested in their emotional responses. During one late-night session, he caught her studying security footage of the crew's daily interactions. Fascinating, she murmured, not realizing he was there. Such complex emotional responses over simple stimuli. Finding anything interesting? Dominic asked, making his presence known. Cynthia didn't startle, he'd never seen her display surprise. Your species is unique, Captain. The way you process emotions, form bonds, make decisions based on intangible concepts like love and loyalty. We have nothing like it in our civilization. Is that why you're really here? He asked carefully. To study our emotions? Cynthia's skin rippled with patterns of deep blue. We are here for exactly what we stated, Captain. Cultural exchange and biological research. Nothing more. But late that night, Dominic couldn't sleep. He accessed the station's security logs, noticing patterns he'd missed before. The Nexians were conducting unauthorized scans of the crew during sleep cycles. Their medical examinations were more extensive than reported. And their questions, always probing about human emotional responses, decision-making processes, fight-or-flight reactions. He took his concerns to Dr. Stone. Something's not right, Lyra. They're studying us like lab rats. Lyra pulled up her own research data. I've noticed anomalies too. Their biological readings don't match their appearance. It's like they're not really in those bodies. Before they could discuss further, the station's alerts blared. Multiple crew members had collapsed, unconscious. As Dominic raced to the medical bay, he saw Cynthia standing over one of the fallen crew, her hand hovering over their head, her skin pulsing with strange patterns. Stop, he shouted, reaching for his sidearm. Cynthia turned, her black eyes now glowing with an inner light. I apologize, Captain Fletcher, but this was never supposed to happen. You weren't supposed to notice. Humans are far more perceptive than our models predicted. The last thing Dominic saw before darkness took him was Cynthia's form shifting, breaking apart into countless points of light, revealing something far less humanoid beneath. The first contact humanity had dreamed of had just become their worst nightmare. Dominic awoke to the sterile white of an isolation chamber. His head throbbed as fragmented memories flooded back, the collapsed crew members, Cynthia's transformation, the darkness. Through the transparent wall, he could see other chambers containing his unconscious colleagues. "They're perfectly safe," Cynthia's voice echoed through the room. She appeared before his chamber, but now her humanoid facade had been replaced by her true form, a being of shifting light and geometric patterns. "We simply needed to adjust the parameters of our study." "Study?" Dominic's voice was hoarse. "Is that what you call kidnapping?" "We prefer comprehensive observation," another voice joined in. A taller figure materialized, Commander Vex, Cynthia's superior. "Your species presents an fascinating anomaly in the galaxy, Captain Fletcher. You're the only sentient race we've encountered that combines high intelligence with such intense emotional capacity." Dominic watched as more Nexians moved among the chambers, their forms rippling with complex patterns. They weren't just studying the crew, they were scanning them, measuring brainwaves, monitoring vital signs. Other species either evolved past emotions as they advanced, Cynthia explained, or remained primitive, ruled by their feelings. But humans, you've managed to harness your emotions, to use them as a driving force for innovation and progress. And that makes us lab rats? Dominic pressed his hand against the chamber wall. What happened to cultural exchange? We did exchange, Vex's form pulsed with what might have been amusement. We offered you technology. In return, we're learning how your emotional responses could benefit our species. Dr. Stone's voice came from a nearby chamber, weak but defiant. Benefit how? Our species is dying, Cynthia's patterns shifted to darker hues. We achieved perfect logic, perfect efficiency, but in doing so, we lost something essential. Our population is declining because we've lost the drive to create, to explore, to connect. We've lost passion. Dominic noticed something else, subtle variations in the Nexians' patterns when they interacted with the humans. Were they being affected by proximity to human emotions? The longer we study you, Cynthia continued, moving closer to Dominic's chamber, the more we understand what we sacrificed for advancement. Your capacity for love, fear, anger, joy, it's not primitive. It's beautiful. So beautiful you had to trap us? Dominic challenged, but he noticed Cynthia's patterns flickering in response to his anger. She was feeling something. The study requires controlled conditions, Vex interjected sharply. Emotion is unpredictable, dangerous. It must be properly contained and analyzed. But Dominic saw the growing discord among the Nexians. Some, like Cynthia, were displaying increasingly erratic pattern changes, signs of emerging emotional responses. Others, like Vex, maintained rigid, controlled patterns. You're not just studying us, Dominic realized. You're trying to reverse engineer human emotions, aren't you? To save your species. The procedure is complex, Vex moved between Cynthia and Dominic's chamber. We must understand the biological and neurological foundations of emotion before we can attempt integration. Integration? Dr. Stone's scientific curiosity broke through her fear. You're planning to incorporate human emotional capacity into your own species? The next phase begins soon, Vex announced, ignoring the question. Prepare the subjects for deep scanning. But Cynthia hesitated, her patterns chaotic. Commander, perhaps we should reconsider the invasive procedures. These humans, they're not just test subjects. They're sentient beings with rights. You're compromised, Vex's form flared with harsh, angular patterns. Your prolonged exposure to human emotions has affected your judgment. Report for decontamination immediately. As Cynthia was led away, she cast one last look at Dominic. In her swirling patterns, he saw something unprecedented, regret, concern, maybe even the beginning of empathy. Dominic pressed against his chamber wall, mind racing. The Nexian's perfect logic had a crack in it, emotion. And that crack was spreading, especially in those like Cynthia who had spent the most time with humans. They weren't just subjects in an alien experiment anymore. They were the catalyst for a revolution that could either save or destroy an entire species. And time was running out. When the deep scanning began, Dominic felt like his mind was being pulled apart. Through the haze of pain, he watched other crew members writhe in their chambers, their brainwaves displayed in pulsing holographic patterns above each pod. Their emotional responses intensify under stress, Vex observed clinically, while teams of Nexians recorded data. Particularly interesting is the correlation between physical discomfort and emotional output. "Stop," Dominic gasped, his fists clenching against the chamber walls. "You're killing us." "Your species is remarkably resilient," Vex responded. "The probability of permanent damage is minimal." Suddenly, the scanning beam focused on Dr. Stone's chamber flickered and died. Cynthia stood at the control panel, her form rippling with unfamiliar patterns. "This is wrong," she declared, her voice carrying a tremor that hadn't existed before. "I can feel it. What we're doing, it's causing pain, suffering. These aren't just readings on a screen anymore." "Step away from the controls," Vex ordered, his form sharp with authority. "Your emotional contamination has progressed further than we realized." "Emotional contamination?" Cynthia's pattern flared. "Is that what you call empathy? Understanding? The very things we're supposedly trying to reclaim?" Other Nexian researchers paused in their work, their patterns showing signs of disturbance. Dominic realized they were witnessing something unprecedented, a Nexian experiencing genuine emotion. "Look at them," Cynthia gestured to the chambers. "Really look. They're not specimens, they're beings capable of love, hope, fear. Everything we lost. Everything we claimed made us superior." "Our superiority lies in our rationality," Vex countered, but Dominic noticed uncertainty in his patterns. "Emotions are a primitive dash." "Primitive?" Dr. Stone interrupted, her voice weak but clear. "Tell me, Commander, what's more primitive, feeling compassion for others, or torturing them in the name of progress?" The room crackled with tension. More Nexians were showing disturbed patterns, affected by the emotional intensity of the confrontation. Dominic saw his chance. "You wanted to understand human emotions," he called out, drawing their attention. "Then understand this, we feel everything. The pain you're causing, the fear, the anger. But we also feel hope, determination, and the unshakable belief that what you're doing is wrong." Cynthia's form pulsed with new patterns, righteous anger, determination, perhaps even the beginning of love. She moved to release the chamber controls. "Stop her." Vex commanded, but his authority was crumbling. Several Nexians moved to protect Cynthia instead. The chamber doors slid open. Dominic stumbled out, helping Dr. Stone from her pod while other crew members escaped. The Nexians were in chaos, their perfectly ordered society fracturing as suppressed emotions broke through centuries of logic. "The ship," Cynthia urged, leading them toward the docking bay. "We can reach the escape pod's dash." A blinding burst of energy cut her off. Vex's form had transformed into something terrible, pure, cold logic given physical form. If emotional contamination cannot be contained, his voice resonated through the ship, then the infection must be eliminated. All of it. The ship's warning systems blared. Self-destruct sequence initiated. "He's going to kill everyone," Cynthia realized, her patterns showing genuine fear. Human and Nexian alike. Dominic grabbed her arm, or what passed for an arm in her energy form. "Then we fight. Together. Show your people their strength in emotion, not weakness." As alarms screamed and systems began to fail, humans and emotionally awakened Nexians stood together against Vex's coldly logical forces. The fate of both species hung in the balance, and time was running out. The breaking point had arrived. Now they would see which was stronger, perfect logic, or the messy, powerful, beautiful force of emotion. The ship shuddered as the self-destruct sequence counted down. Dominic led the group through flickering corridors, his mind racing with improvised plans. Behind them, Vex's forces pursued, their cold energy signatures contrasting sharply with the chaotic patterns of Cynthia and her rebel Nexians. The main reactor, Dr. Stone gasped as they ran. If we can reach it, maybe we can override the sequence. No time, Cynthia's patterns swirled with urgency. The security protocols were designed by purely logical minds, Dominic interrupted. But we're not thinking logically anymore, are we? They reached a junction where the corridor split 3 ways. Vex's voice echoed through the ship's communications system, your emotional infection spreads like a virus. We cannot allow it to reach our homeworld. The reactors below, Cynthia indicated. But Vex will expect us to go there. Dominic made a quick decision. Dr. Stone, take half the crew and our Nexian allies to the escape pods. Cynthia and I will handle the reactor. That's suicide, Dr. Stone protested. That's emotion, Dominic replied with a grim smile. Completely illogical, right? As the groups separated, Dominic and Cynthia raced toward the reactor core. Her patterns had evolved dramatically since their first meeting, now they showed complex harmonies of fear, determination, and something deeper. Your species, she said as they ran, you feel this intensity all the time. Welcome to the human experience, Dominic replied. They reached the reactor chamber, its massive core pulsing with barely contained energy. The reactor's control systems were a maze of holographic interfaces. As Dominic began working, Cynthia's patterns suddenly flared in warning. Behind you. Vex materialized in the chamber, his form now a terrifying construct of pure geometric precision. Your attempt to override the self-destruct sequence is futile. The corruption ends here. Corruption? Dominic challenged, keeping his hands moving over the controls. Look at your own people, Vex. They're not corrupted, they're awakening. Emotional responses are an evolutionary dead end, Vex's form expanded, filling the chamber with cold light. We elevated ourselves above such primitive drives. And lost yourselves in the process, Cynthia moved to stand between Vex and Dominic. I remember now, from the deep scans. Humans don't just feel emotions, they transform them into strength. Love becomes courage. Fear becomes determination. Anger becomes the power to change what's wrong. Vex struck, his energy form lashing out at Cynthia. She absorbed the blow, her patterns shifting to something new, a perfect blend of logical precision and emotional intensity. The override's not working, Dominic called out, his fingers flying over the controls. The logical pathways are too rigid. Then we don't think logically, Cynthia replied, holding Vex at bay. What does your emotion tell you to do? Dominic looked at the reactor core, then at his hands. Something incredibly stupid. He stepped away from the controls and walked straight toward the core. Both Nexians froze, their patterns showing different forms of shock. Stop. Vex commanded. Direct contact with the core will destroy you. Probably, Dominic agreed. But humans are funny that way. We'll risk everything to save others. Completely illogical, isn't it? He reached toward the swirling energy. Cynthia's patterns erupted with an emotion she had never felt before, pure, undiluted fear for someone else's life. Dominic, no. The chamber exploded with light as 3 forms of energy collided, human determination, Cynthia's awakened emotion, and Vex's cold logic. The reactor core pulsed, absorbing and reflecting their combined energies in ways that defied both physical and logical laws. In that moment of chaos, something unprecedented happened. The ship's systems, designed to respond only to logical commands, reacted to the pure emotional energy surging through its circuits. The self-destruct sequence faltered, then stopped. When the light faded, Dominic found himself still alive, suspended in a field of swirling energy. Around him, Vex's rigid patterns had shattered, revealing something new emerging from within. I feel, Vex's voice held wonder and terror in equal measure. How do you bear it? Together, Cynthia answered, her patterns reaching out to stabilize his. That's another thing we learn from humans. No one has to face emotion alone.